Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be going over the upcoming patch 14.5 item update. Now that some time has passed and we have a better idea as to what the items are actually going to look like. This video is going to be more focused not just on what the changes are, but how they affect item builds and comps. We have seen some considerable changes since the initial reveal, and it's still pretty early, so there could be more changes made. Regardless, the goal is to get everyone a bit more comfortable with this update, so if I succeed, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. So I'm just going to go through what I have to say about the changes based on my semi-elite game knowledge, along with my game design and theory expertise. Sterak. This is... Okay, so they originally had this having Omnivamp, and I think this was like 30% AD. This is now no Omnivamp, but it's more AD, and then this health is like the same as it was, but like relative to current Sterak, it's a buff. I think this is like they said, this was pretty hard to appreciate, so I think this Sterak is probably just a better item. And this also separates it a bit from Titans, which is also another good change, because now there's actually like a clear points where you'd want one over the other, because they actually do different things now. So overall, I mean, this was the one I was the most happy with anyway, but I think even with these changes from what they showed in the preview, I think this is even like better health-wise, because I don't think we needed another Omnivamp item, so I'm glad they removed that and gave it some more AD. Overall, I'm very happy with the new Sterak. I think, like, meta-wise and, like, in this set, it still might be a little tricky, because there aren't that many good users, but there are a lot of users that better use it than the current one. So the ones that already used it well were, like, these. I think Zed probably uses it well, like, better than the current one. Rengar Graves probably like it a lot, too. Nefiri probably still prefers Edge of Nights, but I mean, it's not so bad. Like, all the units that would want this item, I think, like this version more than the old one, because none of them really had, like, health synergy, apart from maybe Renekton. So yeah, I think overall this is a very good update. Guinsoo's. Initially, I was a bit upset. I mean, everyone's a bit upset because getting attack speed on attack, as you get more stacks, you get stacks faster. So that made it so that there was like a tipping point where you get, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but the point is, it made this item a late game monster, and it also made it so that the item had self synergy. Now this item is a lot more linear. However, this got buffed from 6 to 7. So in the preview they showed this as 6, and at 6% I thought that was going to be pretty weak and just a clear downgrade to Guinsoo's. Now that this is 7, I think this is pretty good. I think the first like 10 seconds of a fight, this is just strictly better. I think at maybe around the 10-second mark, I think that's when old, or I guess current Guinsoo's would pass it. But in terms of the total attack speed gained, it probably takes to like 17, 18 seconds for it to actually pass this new one. So I think earlier into a fight, this Guinsoo is just going to be a lot better. And it's a lot easier to build on other units, because it's still good on all the units that currently want Guinsoo's, but there's a lot of other units that might now consider Guinsoo's. Now I think this Guinsoo is probably going to be a little too strong. The change I said that I thought they were going to do was just to buff the base attack speed, like the starting attack speed. They could have buffed that to like, because the base stats are unchanged, so it's still 10 and 10. I thought that maybe they could have, if they wanted to mirror Archangel's, that one has starting of 20, and then it's 30 every 5, which is like the same thing as 6 every 1. So they could have made it like 20 starting attack speed, or if that was a little too much, they could have done like 15. I think that would have been acceptable too. But instead they buffed the scaling, which makes it I guess better for people who like care about like the fantasy of like really high attack speed, stalling fights and stuff. So it's better for that. But I think it also just makes the item like very strong. I think overall Guinsoo's users might actually be buffed, despite what everyone was worried about, because they actually fixed the numbers. Because I think the outcry before was valid, because I think 6% was too low. It was kind of just, it didn't scale fast enough. It just was worse in like most ways to the current one. But now I'm pretty happy with the new Guinsoo's, and I think for the health of the game, this is better. There's a lot of units that now, like, they... Okay, so for instance, something like Senna, which, I mean, you probably still shouldn't build this on Senna, but she really does not like this item because she can't stack it. and there's a certain point where Guinsoo's self-stacking is like better, but Senna will pretty much never reach that point because her base attack speed is so low. But the current skin or the new Guinsoo's would be much better than the current one will be on her. On other units that maybe they have like long cast times or something, like Jinx or like I don't know, Brand. I mean Brand's, but like still, like I think this is now better in any kind of fight that wants to scale. So like I guess Street Demon Brand is kind of a burst comp, so maybe not on that. But if you have something like with like a decent amount of stall, like if you just expect the fight to go longer, the new Ginsus is gonna ramp up really fast. Let's look for a better comparison. Because what I was thinking about was like how it compared to something like Nashor's. So Nashor's is not getting changed. So like let's look what this does. 10% base, and then after casting an ability, you get 60%. So at maximum value, you're gonna get 70% attack speed because this like doesn't stack, it just refreshes. With the new Ginsu's, you have 10% base and you have 7% every second, which means at like 9 seconds, you will have 63 attack speed, which means you pass the value of Nashor's. So pretty much any fights that isn't like that's determined by like the first 9 seconds, you probably would prefer the new Ginsu's over Nashor's. Whereas on like a burst kind of champion like Brands, maybe you prefer Nashor's, but like on a more stall oriented comp, like maybe Elise. I think LeBlanc will, because LeBlanc wants to stall, so I think LeBlanc will prefer this new Ginsu's over Nashor's. Probably Aurora too. Aurora probably prefers the new Ginsu's over Nashor's. But yeah, I think this new Guinsoo is very strong. And I think people are going to be a bit sad, but with these numbers, I think it is probably overall better. Statik Shiv. This is getting changed. I think the new one is just Void Staff, right? This works the same way that Last Whisper does, in that it applies on the attacks and the abilities. So this is like a item you put on your main carry. I think in that regard, it's like, the stats are okay. I think so this was 30 and they nerfed it to 25. I don't know how I feel about that. So I think the big thing that determines whether this item is good or not is if it applies on the ability before, like on the ability itself, or it's just like after. Because there are some instances where Last Whisper doesn't apply on the ability itself, and in which case that item is just terrible. But if this applies before the ability, it's like it applies on the actual ability damage itself. So what I mean is, like, if Brand casts and the damage done already has the shred into account, then I think this item is actually pretty good. I think the appeal of Statik Shiv is that you can put a better carry item onto your main carry, because like this is like the stats are like not terrible, but like they not as good as like a proper carry item. Like you could put like consider this over like a Guard Breaker or like a JG or something, like a Giant Slayer, and you probably rather have those. The current Statik Shiv also like was kind of universal, like anyone can have it, and it would help you out your AP carries. So this is like not the same, but I think this is, so I'm gonna miss the Statik Shiv for sure, but I think the new one is fine. Like it at least makes sense. Kraken's Fury is what is replacing Runon's, but instead of getting the bolt, you're now getting 3% stacking 80 damage. I think this item is like kind of niche, but I think it's pretty good. So the first thing we want to do is consider other 80 items and see how they compare. So you take something like Deathblade, which is like mostly just AD. You have 55 AD and 10% amp. So in total, that's like 70% damage. And then the new Kraken's Fury will have 15% starting and then 3% each attack. So I think it would take like, 20 attacks, like 18 to 20 attacks for it to outvalue Deathblade, probably. I think there's like some cases that it would be used pretty well. I think some of the better users are going to be ones that have innate attack speed. I think the two most obvious ones are going to be these two, Kog'Maw and Zeri, because they have rapid fire and they are auto attack based, or some of the other rapid fires either aren't AD or they are kind of more caster oriented. I think these two will use it the best, and I think both of these units will really like this new item. This also lends itself to a more stall-oriented comp, so like, we already have buffs to Kog'Maw reroll, but like, now Kog'Maw reroll is gonna have, let's say, 6 Bastion, or Vanguard, I mean. A lot of stall on the front line. That buys a lot of time for Kog'Maw to ramp. And then the new Kraken's Fury has a lot of synergy with his ability because it scales AD, which his ability scales with. So you actually will be increasing the damage of his ability damage over time. So that's very good. And then exact same thing with Zeri. I don't know if you're playing Vertical Exotech or we're going back to this thing, to 6 Bastion Zeri. This also lends itself to this new item, the stalls. So, and it's really good with Zeri, so that might check out. There might be a world where we also see some 4 rapid fire, maybe. I'm not so sure because I don't know how much that frontline stalls. I think people know that 6 rapid fire is pretty good, but that's kind of like a burst comp. That's not even like a ramping comp. But I mean, maybe this is good in 6 rapid fire. I think apart from those two, there are other users, but I'm not sure how it plays into their comps. So I think new Vayne for sure probably will like it. I think Vayne's build is kind of the same, except you go like new Guinsoo's, and then Kraken's Fury maybe. Or maybe you don't even go like second Guinsoo's or something. I don't know. But I think definitely these two will be part of it because Slayer gives like what, 40 at 4? So like you're not getting a crazy amount of AD, but you're still getting a lot. So the amounts you get from Kraken's Fury will be pretty useful to have. So I think that one also makes a lot of sense. I think Aphelios, specifically if you play 4 Marksman, or you get a lot of AD already, he might not want Kraken's Fury, like as opposed to something like let's say a Giant Slayer, like a QSS, or like an IE. I feel like those might scale his damage more, considering he just already has a ton of AD from his trait. But in a 2 Marksman setup, so something like maybe 6 Vanguard, or like, I guess any vertical, if you do something like this, I think then the new Kraken's Fury will be pretty good on him. So again, I like vertical tank trait lends itself really good to scaling item on the carry. And it could be like 6 Vanguard, maybe 6 Bastion, maybe 6 Bruiser, but I'm not so sure about that just because the traits don't line up as good. For reference, the Aphelios comp for 6 Bastion looks like this. Yeah. 2 Marksman, Viego for both his traits, and he's a 5 cost. And yeah. And that one would just be like new Guinsoo's, Kraken's Fury, plus like maybe Gunblade or something. So we'll look at that on the new patch. And otherwise, there aren't that many users that would use it that much. I mean, Runon's was niche too, and like I guess other units might want it more, but like it's still not like that crazy. I don't think like Jhin cares that much about it, for example. Stuff like Zarya probably don't care. I don't know the interaction with Renekton or like Urgot. Maybe they like it. Actually, Urgot might not like it a lot. I'll have to see with Urgot. But the point is, like, I think it's fine. It's still like kind of niche. It's easier to balance around and design around. So for like future sets, it's probably going to be more useful than Runon's was. But yeah, I'm generally happy with the new direction of this. Especially, like, I like Hurricane personally. It's a fun item. So I think them moving it to the artifact space, I think that makes more sense because it's like a niche thing. And I'm also kind of happy with the artifact version. I don't know if, are they here? Oh, they're not. Oh. I might, okay, I'll look at the actual item preview thing, and we'll look at that version. Redemption. This one is probably the worst change of the item update, just because it's very strictly a nerf in like every way. So, for one, the health regen is worse than before. 2, it's not AoE. And 3, you're also, like, I guess for some reason, also not getting the durability anymore. So even when this, in the preview, this still had the 10% durability, and even then I thought it was still pretty bad. But apparently they removed that in exchange for 50 more health. But yeah, this item is pretty terrible now, and I'll talk about why. For one, I mean, okay, this current redemption is like, I think, pretty broken. So it getting nerfed is like acceptable, but you then have to compare it to what the other items look like. So let's do that. Let's compare it to another regen item, Dragon Claw. So, Dragon Claw provides 75 magic resist, 9% max health, and then every 2 seconds you heal for 2.5% max health. As opposed to the new Redemption, 2.5 missing health. And it's each second, but missing matters a lot here, because if you have 2000 health and you will go to 1000 health, you're at half health, you have lost 1000 health, so you're regenerating off of that 1000 you lost, whereas max health is just the same constant amount every time. So the way it turns out, it's 2.5 for both, but this is every 2 seconds. So in other words, let's just say it's 1.25 every 1 second, as opposed to 2.5. It basically makes it so that if you are half health or above, D-Claw is regenerating you more than the Redemption is. And then on top of that, you're only getting the 15 mana and the 200 health, whereas D-Claw has its percent max health, which kind of makes up for the health of Redemption. And then it also has 75 magic resist, which is pretty good, considering it's a magic resist item and that the healing is just a bonus. With that comparison, this item in its state, its preview state, is just strictly worse than a Dragon's Claw. You will regen more below 50% health, but only to a maximum of twice as much. It's not as much as it could be. I think there are some things that they could do to amend this. One, they could buff the base stats and then give it back to durability. Like, they would probably have to do both, because this item is just very, very undertuned. I think another thing is they could change this to max health and then maybe lower this to like 2% to make this more focused on the regen so that the item isn't terrible. But whatever Riot decides, this item is basically unbuildable if they release it like this. Like, it is so bad. Like, it is just worse than pretty much every tank item. They need to make it better on the original user than before. But this item is just worse than... And then the reason for that is just how missing health works. I mean, you could do... you can add it, but like that's not really how the math works out. So like people thinking multiplicatively, I'll think that this might actually be better, but no. It actually is more favored towards the 15 than it is towards the 2.5, because if you check every 5 seconds, you're gonna generally be missing more health than you would be every 1 second, which means overall the healing you're gonna get, it's gonna be a smaller amount, and then as you heal, that amount is gonna be less and less than it is each time. Whereas every 5 seconds, you're getting a pretty big heal. So even if you were to do it, to add it, and you were to say, 2.5 times 5 is 12.5, so less than 15. But keep in mind that as you heal, the amounts you're gonna heal the next second is probably gonna be less than before, because you already healed some of it, so you're missing less health. So even on the base user, it is just worse than the current Redemption. So yeah, this needs more buffs, and I really hope that this item does not release in the States. Guardbreaker. Let's see. They removed the AP. They didn't do that before, but okay, they removed the AP. That's fine. That's acceptable. They buffed this to 4 times as opposed to 3 times. So now the max amp is a bit higher. But let's talk about how the amp works in the first place. On the current Guardbreaker, you get 15% for 3 seconds after damaging a shield. So this is like awkward, but it's like kind of nice, because you don't have to be playing around crit to potentially get this. You have to hit a random shield, which is not consistent, so I get why it's like a little annoying. However, the problem with the new Guardbreaker is that it is tied to critical strikes, meaning you have to already have crit for this to be like valuable. So this is better if you're gonna go like a IE like this kind of thing. But as just a raw item by itself, if you don't have like spell crits, for instance, you are not getting... I mean, how long do the stacks last? 5 seconds? Actually, that's not that bad. But you're now tied to like having crit. So okay, let's think about it from an auto attack perspective, because maybe it's not actually that bad. This item will get you to 45% on its own. If you stack like, let's say, once a second, you can maintain probably 2 stacks consistently. Okay, maybe it's not that bad. And it's obviously better if you have more crits. But the point I wanted to make was that you could play around this without having to build around crits, whereas this you have to build around crits. But I think, as I'm thinking about it now, maybe you don't have to build around crit. I mean, okay, you should still, but like, I think it still comes out like not as bad if you don't have crits. Okay, I'm less offended than I was prepared to like complain, but I'm thinking about it now. I'm trying to rationalize a little bit. Honestly, it's probably fine. And I think this was like a little annoying. The one thing I will complain about though is that they're changing the name. Why are they changing the name? They're gonna change it to like Mace's like Flail or something. Yeah, that's gonna be annoying. They should not do that, especially since they're not changing the icon. They're only changing the name. They should not change that because that's just gonna be annoying. Flickerblades, right? This is the first one. So this is essentially the same as current Guinsoo's, except you also have this, and this is buffed a little bit. So this is obviously going to be good on the same units that Guinsoo's is currently good on, and that's it. It's just the same thing. It's so only the units that currently build it would want this new one, but it is buffed for them. So I mean that's pretty good. As for how it compares to other artifacts, I'm not sure if it would be that strong. I think this might still be one of the weaker artifacts, but I think this being in the artifact design space, I think that's fine. Also, it's really funny that they have this video when this is literally just a TF with a Guinsoo's, like, pretty much. They're like, whoa, new item! But, like, there aren't even, like, effects or anything. Like, it's just funny that they actually have a whole video for this. But they don't have one for, like, some of the other ones that actually would need it. Like, do they have a Sterak's one? No, they don't. They don't have a Guardbreaker one either. Like, that's so weird. They don't have one for this either. And this one, like, for sure deserves it. And this one. Okay, this one does have. Okay. But, yeah. So, Indomitable Gauntlet, I think the icon is... I'm pretty sure the icon was supposed to be Iceborne Gauntlet from League. But, okay. 450 health, 20 armor and magic resist, holy move speed drastically reduced, gain 10% max health, stun immunity, pull current target into melee range. In other words, this is Deep Roots light. However, I think, like, as the person who optimized Deep Roots, half of, like, maybe more than half of the interactions were on the basis that you could not move at all. And it was a double-edged sword because it would cause a couple situations that were not favorable, but it also enabled a lot of things that were very good about it. So that is being replaced by move speed drastically reduced. So what this means is that the pathing is going to be a bit different. So I'm not sure if this is going to be like broken. Not like I don't mean like broken as in like strong, but I mean like broken as in like literally like game breaking buggy wise, as the old Deep Roots was, and I was told to not talk about. But I mean, this is like fine. I think it's like not that bad of a tank item, but I feel like this isn't gonna be appreciated nearly as much as the anomaly was in the last sets. I feel like the applications are much less. You can probably still backline it, but you have to put it on a ranged unit, probably. I mean, I don't know how slow drastically reduced is, as for whether a thing would walk up or not, like how much it'd walk up. I have to look at that. But like, considering that you move at all, you can no longer... I don't think there's a world where you would be able to pull something out of the ordinary now. I think maybe the weirdest thing that you could do is like, let's say you want to, you're the middle lane, you want to pull the Neferi. I think maybe the weirdest thing you can do is like block off and then pull this. Or you just backline and you can pull something into the backline. Those are probably the weirdest things you can do with this one. However, otherwise, as a broad tank item, this is like fine. I mean, they want more generic tank option. I think that's fine. I think at the very least, like this stuff is good. This stuff is good. But like, if this is game breaking, we'll see. We'll see pretty shortly. Statik Shiv. This is an interesting one because it has stats, but it's one, it's every third attack, but two, it has an AP ratio. So what's the user they chose for this? Aphelios? I don't think it's Aphelios, but Oh, but they could have made the effect like bigger. They didn't make the effect bigger. But this one's interesting. I think the clear best user is going to be Twisted Fates because you want to look for attack speed synergies, but you also want to look for AP synergies. So TF has both of those. I think otherwise, maybe high attack speed units like okay, TF is the only AP high attack speed unit, but you might look at like a high AP unit and then just give it attack speed. That might be an option too. So something like 8 techie might be a thing. I mean, Bren's cast time is like kind of high, but like what else would work? I don't know, maybe like a Vagar. Because it doesn't scale with like a unit, it just goes with the raw AP number, so maybe like that would work. Vagar also doesn't spend that much time casting, but he can get a lot of AP from both Techie and Cyber Boss. That one could work too, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I think for sure the default is going to be TF, like 100%. I think that's like the clear like synergy. And this is it's probably an S tier item onto him. But yeah, we'll see. I think yeah, I think it's okay. I want to see how much you can abuse the AP ratio, but this set doesn't really lend itself to that much abuse of it. And I think the obvious one is obvious, but the less obvious ones, which are just the raw AP abusers, they might also be able to benefit. We'll see how good it is. Because like, okay, let's say you have 100 bonus AP, which means you have 200 total AP. So you have, so 50% of that's 100. So you do 150 every third attack to 4 enemies. 600 like bonus damage every 3 attacks. That's not bad. Titanic Hydra, which is the Runon's Hurricane replacement. I initially hated this. Now I'm like okay with it. So okay, so this gives 300 health, AD attack speed. Not like the stats aren't bad. And then the effect is you deal 3% max health plus 25% AD as bonus damage to targets and adjacent enemies. So one, it's bonus damage to the target. So this just buffs your base auto attack. And then 2, it's also AoE. So this is actually pretty good as a damage increase. Like initially I thought that this was just a downgrade. With the math, it's not a downgrade, it's actually a very clear upgrade. So 25% AD. In comparison, Hurricane is 50% AD to 1 target. So this is now AoE. Which, I mean, okay, so like the thing is, this could technically hit stuff that aren't close to your main targets, but I mean, I think overall, the Tiamat's AoE effect, that's probably an upgrade. I think overall. It's instead of 50, it's 25 plus 3% max health. How much is 3% max health as opposed to AD? Let's take a look at some units. We'll start off with Vayne, because I think Vayne is probably the one that people are going to look at right now. She's like the most like Runon's user of the sets. So at 2-star, this is 1,000. At 3-star, this is 1,800. So 1,000, 3% of that is 30. The point is the damage is up. Like this is greater than 50% AD on most units. And then you also have 2 factors you can play around. So there's some units that can get a ridiculous amount of AD or health, like Mundo. So on them, the damage is gonna be way up. I'm not sure. Like I think you might actually want to build this on those units. I guess if we look for like an extreme example where we have like a Mundo 3 with like, this probably has like 10,000 health or something. Like let's just assume 10,000 health. 3% max health in that situation is 300 damage plus AD, which is, I don't know, let's say it's like another 50. I mean, that's pretty good. Every auto attack, like, that's really good. Or Cho'Gath. Cho'Gath could use this really well too because he's Boombot. You'll have a little less health, but he gets all the Boombot damage. So I think there's definitely abuse cases there. And then not only is the damage up, but the AoE is better. So yeah. As for who, okay, so going back to who would build it, I think both melees and range users could use this okay. Because it also applies to the main targets, I think literally any auto attack based champion, like AD, would probably like this a lot. Kog'Maw, maybe Jinx. Would Senna like it? She attacks slowly, but like double cleave, that's probably not even bad. And then obviously this one. And then the other, but then I think also frontliners would use this well, and then maybe tanks. I think these frontliners for sure. The other ones, like J4 probably would use it well. I'm not sure how well Rengar Actually, what's the interaction with the Graves? Like, I'm curious about those. Maybe Shaco? What's the math on Shaco? Eh, maybe ranged Shaco, but ranged Shaco is also just hard to get to anyway. I'm also curious about like something like MF, because like every like few waves counts as an attack, so you can proc Hurricane like 3 times I think, or 4 times during her ult. Like not even like because it's good, but I think I'm curious as to see what that would look like in her ult. That's more of a visual thing though. I don't know. There might be other uses I missed, but the point is, I think there's a lot of units that could use this well. I think a lot of backliners will like it because it's also a single target damage. If it didn't do that, I think there would be a lot less units that would want it. But because it's as bonus damage to the target and adjacent enemies, but like because it also applies to the main target, this is a very good item. Because Hurricane does not apply to the main targets. It only applies a bolt to a nearby enemy. So I think this item will be very good on auto attack based champions. Or, like I said, maybe tanks. I think the extreme examples of tanks, for sure. On other tanks, probably less. But, I mean, it should be fine. That's everything. That's all the new items